Welcome, everyone. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance. Welcome. We're glad you could join us today. Our first order of business will be to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next, we will proceed to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a commissioner or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. All items on the consent agenda are commission action items unless otherwise noted. Is there anything that needs to be removed? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Yes, Madam President, I would move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, on the regular agenda, all of the items are commission action items unless otherwise noted. The first item is the Moon Valley Subdivision, request for approval and waiver of policy. We're going to start with staff presentation from Ms. Wallace.
Madam President, Commissioners, for the record, Mindy Wallace, Development Services. Before you today, we have a decision briefing for the Moon Valley Subdivision. This is a rezone preliminary plat application to allow for the development of a 299 lot subdivision consisting of 268 single-family building lots, 22 common lots, 8 driveway lots, and 1 private road lot on approximately 145 acres. The site has frontage on Moon Valley Road, right here, which is currently classified as a local street. This development is estimated to generate approximately 1,436 vehicle trips per day, with 110 of those occurring during the PM peak hour. All of the internal streets within the subdivision are proposed to be private roads and will be designed and constructed meeting the City of Star standards. This includes the storm drainage and stormwater systems. As part of this application, staff has recommended that Moon Valley Road west of Short Road be reclassified to a collector roadway, and that's the segment shown in yellow. Moon Valley Road east of Short Road is already classified as a collector roadway, and that's the blue dashed line. The segment of Moon Valley in yellow currently has an average daily traffic count of approximately 88 trips per day, but the additional traffic anticipated to be generated by this development, the average daily traffic count will go up to about 1,545 vehicle trips per day. ACHD policy allows up to 2,000 trips per day on a local road. There are several parcels north of the site on Moon Valley Road that are currently undeveloped and designated as mixed use and high density residential with the City of Star's comprehensive plan, and those are highlighted in a blue box. With this development and the future development of those adjacent parcels, the average daily traffic count on Moon Valley Road west of Short is anticipated to exceed 2,000 trips per day. Because of this, staff has recommended that Short Road be reclassified to a collector roadway. Typically, 7-foot wide attached concrete sidewalks are required on collector roadways. However, the reclassification of Moon Valley Road was not discussed with the applicant during pre-application meetings, and there's a sizable canal, the Pioneer Canal, on the south side of Moon Valley Road abutting the site. Construction of a 7-foot wide attached sidewalk would impact the canal, requiring it to be piped or modified to accommodate the construction of a 7-foot wide attached sidewalk. Due to the size of the canal, the site's non-continuous frontage on Moon Valley Road, and that a detached sidewalk would have to be set back and require crossings of the canal to tie back into the roadway, staff has recommended the construction of a 5-foot wide attached sidewalk on Moon Valley Road for this application only. This allows the construction of pedestrian improvements abutting the site and for the canal on the south side of the roadway to remain in its current configuration. Staff recommends approval of the staff report as written, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions from the commission?
Yes, Mindy, I
Against
have
that?
some questions. Thanks for this presentation. This is a big development. I appreciate the attachment of the development checklist from Compass, which puts it in the context of the Communities in Motion's plan and goal. We went through a pretty serious issues. ACHD was required to protect property along the river during the flood event in 2017. We may well be called upon in 2019, depending on how quickly this moisture comes down. Because these are private roads and STAR will be reviewing that, and yet it's the whole drainage system that is under ACHD's jurisdiction. What kind of evaluation have we done as to the potential impacts of that, or will it come back to us as the potential impacts on channelizing the river and the drainage in this subdivision?
President Arnold and Commissioner Hanson, all of that will be reviewed by the City of Star and any other jurisdiction. The storm drainage system will be separate from any ACHD system. They won't intermingle, and so we won't review or have jurisdiction over any of that. And perhaps the applicant will be able to speak to that a little bit more than I'm able to at this time.
That would be helpful, because as you know, the channelizing of the river with development as we head towards Eagle created issues of flooding 2 years ago. And so we certainly have the knowledge, and if we have that issue arise as a result of additional development, we certainly would have the knowledge in advance of the consequences. So I look forward to hearing from the developer as well.
Okay, are there other questions? All right, now we'll hear from the applicant. If you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Evening. It's afternoon. Every time I'm at a noon meeting, I say evening. Mark Tate, for the record, 1087 West River Street, Boise, Idaho, 83702. I like the new microphones too. So just a little bit of history on the property. This property was actually annexed and zoned prior to Highway 16 being constructed into the City of Star. So it was annexed and zoned as primarily mixed use with some residential. They did not file a preliminary plat at the time or any development plans. So we're the first application to come in with an actual preliminary plat. The project, as Mindy mentioned, is planned to have private streets to be gated. You know, the impetus behind that is really, we're kind of at the end of the line. You know, we have no connectivity on the south side to the river. Highway 16 abuts the project on the west side. There's some estate residential on the east side. This aerial gets over to where you can kind of see some really high-end homes there along the river. And to Commissioner Hanson's questions about flooding and jurisdiction and ACHD responsibility, as Mindy said, the storm drain system will be private, part of the HOA along with the streets. We will design the streets to City of Star standards, which they really fall back, you know, as far as widths and engineering standards to ACHD standards as well. The storm drain system will use a series of lakes and swales. We know that there's groundwater in the area, and that's apparent, obviously being next to the Boise River. So we know we're in a high groundwater area. Storm drains and storm water will be accommodated through a lot of surface detention and ponds. As far as the actual flooding question, we did see the event in 2017. That was very apparent. And on this aerial, you know, you can see the area on the south side of the river. There are aerials available where you can see that flooding event and where the floodwaters went, and it went all to the south. And so that is one benefit of this site. You can see there are a couple of homes right along the river in this site. They've never been inundated with floods. They were built in the 80s and 90s, I believe. And we've done pretty extensive studies in the jurisdiction. So the floodplain administrator in this case is the city of Star. Ada County has also been involved as they control portions around it. So we are following all of the applicable guidelines as far as floodplains and floodways. And just so everybody understands the distinction, a floodway is the massive event, 100-year event. Floodplain can flood, or excuse me, floodway is a more frequent event. Floodplain is kind of the catastrophic event. You know, we are not planning on building in any floodway. The city of Star does not allow it. So there's portions of the property that you can see along the river that are going to remain floodway and will not be built upon. In the floodplain, the city of Star has guidelines for separation from the floodplain. You know, FEMA's standard is basically you can't build in the floodplain. You can build above the floodplain. City of Star's standards are more rigorous than that. You're actually required to go higher out of the floodplain than just the minimum by FEMA. City of Boise has their own code. Eagle has their own code. But they're all fairly similar where it's, you know, you've got to be a certain amount of feet out of the floodplain to be able to build in those areas. So we're following those guidelines very closely. We're planning on digging a series of lakes on the property that will provide fill material basically to raise pads, and there's two things actually going on out there. We're filling one for floodplain, but two for groundwater, and so those things are being evaluated really closely. You can see there's a lake on the property already that was dug to provide material for Highway 16. We'll be expanding it in certain areas and kind of recontouring it. Just from a project standpoint, that will be a contact lake that we plan to be able to use for boating and swimming and stand-up paddle boarding. We will have public access down to the river, even though it's a private subdivision. And so with that, I would stand for any more questions.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there
That was very
questions?
helpful.
Madam President, Mr. Tate, you gave a physical approximation where the emergency access points are going to be. Could you just point out
Is there a
where they're going to be on the map?
pointer? So the application that we have here, we plan for three emergency accesses, or three accesses. So there's the main access in the middle. On the left side, where there's a shared driveway, that's actually planned to go through as an emergency access. And on the east side, that's another emergency access. And in meetings with the fire department, they've actually asked us to make the other shared driveway along Moon Valley Road an emergency access as well. And then all the way onto the west side, as you go to the end of Moon Valley Road, there's a cul-de-sac and a private driveway that goes down to the existing residence on the river. That will be an emergency access as well, that they can actually drive all the way down to the river. And Highway 16 was actually constructed high enough that you can actually drive under Highway 16. So with some developments being planned on the west side of Highway 16, it will be an opportunity for both pedestrians, greenbelt users, and emergency responders, if need be, to be able to get down there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Just by way of information, on that aerial photograph, is that current?
It looks to be current.
Is it since the 2017 flooding?
No, because
They're from 16.
yeah, so
Okay.
during
Well,
the flood, there was they called it a pit capture
Oh,
in
yeah.
that first pond. And so the riverbank actually breached, and the first pond that you see with the island in the middle of it was inundated, along with basically that entire flood area.
I only ask that because the Ewing family that own a lot of that, where it's going to be made into a natural park, Margaret Aldape Park. I visited with her last fall, and she just in tears told me how that decimated their property. And so I have no doubt where the water wants to go.
Yes, yeah, and it's pretty, you can see all they call them rivulets running through that area. It really is an interesting piece of property in there with the different ponds. And it's actually the area, the second pond from the east side, that would be their property, and they've got a conceptual land plan, and they've worked with the city of Meridian, and they hope to make that a regional park along the river there, which would be pretty special.
We helped fill it with bluegill and bass.
Oh, cool.
All right, other questions? No? Just one clarification, all of the emergency accesses will conform to the state fire code minimum of 20 feet, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, great. All right, is there anyone from the audience who would like to address this item? Seeing no one, any further questions from the commission? Commissioner Baker, did you have any questions?
No, I didn't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, then we're ready for a motion.
Madam President, I would move that we approve the Moon Valley subdivision as per the staff report.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, the next item listed on our agenda is the condemnation of right-of-way. We've had a request to defer this item, so Mr. Price, we just need a motion to do that.
Yes, Madam President, Commissioner Steve Price, ACHD General Counsel. We're having some communications problem with the property owner's attorney. We hope to have this, we're close in having this matter resolved. So staff is requesting that we have this agenda item deferred 2 weeks. And hopefully we'll have good news and we'll have it settled.
Okay, great. So do I have a motion to defer this item for 2 weeks?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, the final item on our agenda is public communications, and I understand we have one citizen who would like to address the commission, so I will invite Mr. Lombard up, and welcome. If you would, please state your name and address for the record.
Madam President, fellow commissioners, thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Steve Lombard. I'm a public information officer with the state of Idaho, and I currently reside at 4620 North Tipton Avenue in Meridian, 83646, part of the Copper Basin HOA, and I'm on behalf of my HOA, I'm here representing us today to speak with you. I've come today to express concerns that our community has about a proposed development called the Silver Springs Subdivision. I believe you probably have the handout in front of you that has the map of the proposed development and a series of questions that we have submitted to you.
I need to ask our legal counsel if it's appropriate for us to have this presentation, if this is an item that's going to come before us at some point.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. According to a lot of the open meeting law rules, since this will be a quasi-judicial hearing, the commission can't consider any presentation or any fact gathering outside the open meeting law requirements. We anticipate that we haven't received an application as of today's date.
That's what I've understood, yes.
Yeah, and when, if we believe there's an application coming, then we really can't discuss the matter. We have a tight record by law. We have to keep that record consistent. And so I would ask that when we do get an application and the matters before the commission within the open meeting law, that you come and you provide your presentation at that time. I'm sorry for the that rule, but that is the law. And it's simply better for the public, where everybody gets to hear your concerns. It's better for the commission, and you will be heard.
Okay. I will do that. Thank you. Okay.
Okay,
I
thank
appreciate-
you very much.
No, I get it. I understand, but I'll see you again. Okay.
Good,
Thanks.
good.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wanted to talk to us today? Seeing no volunteers, meeting adjourned.